Alright, so episode 5 of The Where the Batman, titled Broken. This episode I really enjoyed because obviously the main focus wasn't the villain who was Humpty Dumpty. It was the interaction between Batman and Gordon. And, I liked the episode because it gave us more of a feel for the universe because, starting from the first episode, we got to see that this was pretty early on. The Where the Batman, the series, takes place early on in, Batman's, adventure, I guess. And this episode really shows how early on it is because, as everyone knows, or at least most people know, Gordon, even though he starts off, not liking Batman, he eventually becomes, Batman's partner. He works with the cops. He pretty much says, give Batman some leeway because he doesn't kill people. He's a vigilante who, he fights crime. He solves the problems without, hurting anybody. So we'll let him do what he needs to do. And then we'll go in and arrest the people. But this is really early on, and instead of that, we get, Gordon telling his officers, like, are you waiting for an invitation? Go up and arrest the Batman because he doesn't really trust Batman at this point. We just have, a cop and a vigilante who's doing a lot of illegal stuff. Just being a vigilante is completely illegal. So I enjoyed this episode because of its interaction and focus on Gordon and Batman kind of working together, but not really because Gordon pretty much he just wonders why can't I get this guy, and Batman is just being Batman. And he's just like, I'm gonna help him regardless of whether it's legal or not. And as far as the side story goes with Tatsu, there's not much I can talk about with that because there wasn't much to it. So I'll just get that out of the way. I enjoyed it, the little bit that they showed. I really was hoping for a lot more, especially when they had the little flashback scene. I thought they were going to show, like the Soul Taker being used, which they showed, but I thought they were going to show that. I thought they were going to show, how she got the Soul Taker and, how she escaped and stuff, but they didn't show that this episode, so I'm assuming they'll show it next episode, which makes sense because, like I said, this episode was focused on Gordon and Batman, so they couldn't use too much time on, Tatsu and her story, which is obviously going to be a big part of the season considering it's the League of Assassins. So, obviously that'll come into play, and we'll get more information on that in later episodes. So I'm not too upset about it, but I'm just really curious because I don't know much about the Soul Taker sword and how Tatsu's gonna really play into the rest of this season and next season, aside from her eventually becoming Batman's sidekick. So I'm not too upset that they didn't show a lot about it, but I'm glad they at least had it in there because it would be weird if she wasn't at least looking for the sword and stuff like that. And having Alfred talk to her and know him knowing about the Soul Taker sword and having taken it for himself, I feel like that's a good step towards her really becoming Bruce's partner later in this season or in future seasons. Hopefully this season, because I'd really like to see her go out and see them actually work together because they're two really different characters. But like I enjoyed the little side story that they had, and also my favorite part of the side story is when she finally decided to ask for Alfred's help, and when she like snuck up on him and he like pulled a gun on her and caught her by surprise. I really enjoyed that because he's like, don't sneak up on an ex-spy while he's making a sandwich. I just thought that was interesting. Because, even though he's out of, being a spy and all that, he still has all that intense training, which we saw in some other episodes. But, he's like making a sandwich and it's just like, a footstep and he pulls a gun on her. And I just thought that was really cool for, just Alfred's character in general. But, back to the main story. Batman and Gordon going against Humphrey Dumphrey, or obviously Humpty Dumpty. I like this character. I like the villain. I don't, obviously I mentioned this before. I don't know a lot about the villains, and I don't really do extra research because there's just no point to doing the extra research just for the episode. But the little I know about the character, obviously he's based off of Humpty Dumpty. I liked how it started off with the people inside of the statues. It had sort of a weird psychological type effect to me, sort of like in like a suspense movie type of thing where they have to solve the crime and stuff. But obviously it didn't go that way because it's Batman and it's a half hour series, so they can't have like that complete, suspense drama movie type deal. They figured out who it was after, because it's Batman, so he figured out who got kidnapped. So of course he went to see Wales, and who the guy who played Wales, I really like that voice actor. I don't know who it is. I know it's not Kevin Michael Richardson, who plays pretty much every other deep voice person ever, but I don't think it was him. And um, I was gonna check the name, but I actually realized today for the first time they don't show credits for Beware the Batman. Like that never stood out in my mind until today because I was curious as who played him, and also as to who played Humpty Dumpty because I recognize the voice but I don't know the name. But I think both of those people played their parts really well. Um, Humpty Dumpty, when they first showed him, or I guess when they showed him in Lieutenant Gordon's house, he looked a lot like Chucky to me, and obviously that's purely in the face and not his humongous fat body. But for some reason, like when I saw his face, I just thought of Chucky, which I don't know why, but I did. But his character I thought was really well done. It wasn't, he's not the fighting type character, even though he is pretty strong. Like the part where he hits Gordon against the wall, I was like, he's a huge guy. He's actually really strong, but he's sort of the inverted type of character, so he doesn't really use the strength that he has. It would kind of be like the Hulk, not to mess with anybody who's really big on DC versus Marvel, but it would be like the Hulk not using his strength even though he has it. It would be like the Hulk being scared of everybody else, and he's kind of like that. He's a really big, powerful guy, but he doesn't use his strength to his advantage. He uses his mind and the weird traps and stuff that he has, which I really appreciated. I like, like I said in the beginning, when it had that sort of psychological feel to it, I really enjoyed that. And throughout the episode as a whole, I really enjoyed. And just like a small little note, when they were trying to take the first guy out of the statue, when they're in the parking lot, he said like, "What are you jokers doing to me?" I know that's like the smallest little line, but I don't know if anyone else caught him say that. But for some reason, I feel like that was intentional, just because it's Batman, and he could have just said, "What are you guys doing to me?" or anything, but he specifically said, "What are you jokers doing to me?" And that just stuck in my head, so I wanted to point that out to you guys. But all the little traps that he did, I really enjoyed. Like the first one, it's pretty simple, it's just with the gun. The one with the cannons I thought was pretty cool, and how Batman solved it. And I like the guy in the taxi where he was like, you missed, and then of course he didn't because he used the lamppost to, dodge, or not dodge, but to deflect the cannons. Which once again, it's Batman, so he thinks ahead, and it was really smart. And I thought that was a pretty cool move on his part. But overall, I love the episode. I love the characters, like I said. The two things that really did stick out to me were the voice actors for some reason. I just enjoyed how they played the characters, and that was for Wales, even though he was only in like the two little parts. And the guy who played Humpty Dumpty, it had a really creepy aspect how they did it, because for the most part, when you really think about it, when he spoke, it was never really him speaking. You never got to actually see him speak except for maybe one or two parts. I can't even remember if he spoke at all where you actually saw his mouth move. Generally when he spoke, it was just, you could see like part of his body, but you can actually see his face. And it was always sort of this, sort of like a creepy off-screen type of voice thing that they did with him. And I really appreciated that for his character, because, I mean, him as a character, you could make it and he'd just be like a really weak character. But how they did it for this episode, I really appreciated it, because it made him, really creepy, and all you really got to see were his, his works, which were, the toy soldiers. And I thought that was cool. It didn't really use him too much as a part of the episode. It was his voice and the atmosphere of his character being, this creepy, sort of almost omniscient character. And we really just got to see his toy soldier. So I really appreciated that for what they did with him, because like I said, you have a character named Humpty Dumpty, he could just be a really crappy character, but they did it really well. So I love the episode, and the connection between Gordon and Batman, I appreciate that, because like I said, we got it a little bit earlier with the Magpie episode, and that was more, this is what Batman did, this is what Gordon did, and in this episode, it's, this is what they did together, and they interact a lot. Batman calls Gordon, and it's the first time that happens, and he's like, how'd you get this number and all this, so they're starting to go through the paces where Gordon and Batman, work together, and Gordon got saved by Batman twice so far, once in the Magpie episode and once in this episode. So, he saved his life twice so far, and I'm sure he's going to save his life many more times. And eventually, they're going to be friends, but for now, we got to see, where they are as far as this specific Batman universe. And I appreciated that for the episode. So, let me know what you thought of the episode, what you think of, Humpty Dumpty, Wells, even though he wasn't, in it too much. Just, what do you think of the episode as a whole? Because, like I said, I liked it. So, let me know what you thought below. Thanks for watching.